Welcome to the second season of Can I Get a Retake, the podcast where education gets innovative. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Michaela. Join us each month as we dive into the trends and technologies shaping the future of higher education.
Stay curious, stay inspired, and come learn with us from today's educators. In this episode, we explore the complex intersection of food production, ethics, and animal agriculture. Our guest, Dr. Kimberly Miller, beloved agricultural science professor at California State Polytechnic University at Pomona, has dedicated over a quarter century to educating students about the nature of our food system. That is, the animals we raise and harvest, as well as the dilemmas that keep communities food insecure, even in the wealthiest of nations.
Drawn to both teaching and animal science since childhood, Dr. Miller earned her bachelor's in animal science, her master's in agricultural science, and her PhD in agricultural education. Her GRL title, Ethical Applications in Agriculture, is uniquely crafted to introduce students to the ethics of animal science by teaching them not what to think, but how to think. We will start at the beginning. So if you could give us a little bit of background on your personal journey from high school teacher to professor to author, and how you got into agricultural studies.
Sure. It goes all the way back to being in the second grade, the teacher part of it anyway, and I still have. I'm old school, so it was when you're learning how to write, and it's that paper that you try and erase on, and then you immediately get a hole. It's kind of a brown color, and had the dashed lines in between this, and you had to write your. So I wrote a very short story that when I am older, I want to be a teacher, and I will wear a red dress every day. I've never owned a red dress in my life, but I did predict that I was going to be a teacher. So from second grade, wanted to teach. All through middle school-ish, wanted to teach high school, but I the high school that I went to had an agriculture program. And agriculture programs in high schools, they exist. They're not in every high school, like math and English and history, but the high school that I went to, which I also grew up near. So when I was a child, my family would walk down to the school farm and see all the animals that were there. So when I got to high school, I went to that high school and immediately wanted to be in the agriculture program. And I feel that's because my family spent so many years walking down to the school farm to see the animals when there wasn't a whole lot to do. So I immediately jumped into the agriculture program, and that in high school, my experiences in the agriculture classes and in the FFA was what solidified my wanting to teach agriculture. So I have a degree in animal science and then a master's degree in agriculture science, all of the credentials to teach high school in California. In California, you actually have to have 2 credentials to teach high school agriculture. And then started teaching high school agriculture. I've taught a myriad of courses: floral design, agriculture government, animal science, general agricultural science, plant science, horticulture. Um, Nowadays, agriculture programs are more closely related to science classes. So as I went from one high school to another high school, I've taught at 2 high schools in my high school teaching career. Started teaching science-based courses, agriculture biology, and agriculture chemistry. Taught veterinary science as well. So I did that for 14 years. And during my time teaching high school agriculture, I was lucky enough to get connected with a doctoral program and completed my doctoral program while I was teaching high school. And that doctoral program is in agricultural education. I also earned an online learning certificate linking back to GRL because all of the publications are online. So
Mhm.
When I started teaching at Cal Poly Pomona in 2011, what I discovered was my love of obviously teaching. Teaching is totally my jam. But also my love of facilitating courses in a variety of different ways to suit different students' needs. I have students that will tell me, look, I don't do good with fully online courses. I have a hard time keeping track of my assignments. I have a hard time, staying involved because it's just me. And a lot of students struggled with that here in California with the shutdowns when everything went online. And then I have students who will say, "Look, I love online learning, as do I personally." And so, and then I get a mix. I'll have students that will say, "I appreciate the hybrid courses that you facilitate, where we meet for a short time on campus, and then a majority of our work is done on our online learning platform." And so, again, when I got to Cal Poly Pomona and we had our learning management systems available to us, I had already learned how to manage classes because of my online learning certificate. So that blend of still being able to keep the core subject matter of agriculture, but also then facilitate courses in a variety of different modalities, was really exciting. And online learning has only gotten better since I graduated in 2011 with my advanced degree, with my doctoral degree. And so every year, I'm really excited about all of the tools and opportunities, um, to enhance online learning, and being an online publisher or the author
Mhm.
of a book that is solely published online is really kind of the ultimate exciting thing that I get to do for my students. No matter if I meet with them only face to face, hybrid, or fully online, the online publication part of what I get to do fits into all of those learning modalities. So um, that's a little bit about my
Mhm.
little adventure and where I am now. It was just happenstance that I got connected with GRL for the first publication that I wrote, which was the food animal production course for the animal science course that I used to facilitate. And now onto my second publication, for the agricultural ethics book, which I'm pausing because the the ethics course that I get to facilitate at Cal Poly is so exciting for me. And every semester, it's this humongous group of students, typically between 150 and 200 students. It's a fully online course. But what I love the most about that, and once this book comes to full publication and get to use it with the students, is putting together submissions that I say, okay, students, here's this basic information. Now you tell me through your ethics and your values and what you know about what you think about different things in the agriculture industry. You tell me what you think and your opinion on this. And I love reading what the students have to say. Because I learn through their opinions. Okay, I've got a group
Mhm.
of students that think A, B, and C, or they're all over the place, or they all agree on this, or they all agree on that. So it's very exciting to me to be writing this online publication to enhance what I already do with the agricultural ethics course that I facilitate for the students at Cal Poly Pomona.
I like the idea of not only thinking in different distances, but also thinking into the future too. Because as the climate system evolves, it's going to open up opportunities and maybe close opportunities in other places. So, how do you kind of impart that knowledge to students? Like, let's think 10, 20, 30 years into the future. How are you going to apply this?
A simplistic answer is ensuring that I'm always reminding them that they are living and working in a world that's constantly changing, reminding
Mhm.
them of what we all know, especially the two of you, working at GRL, and if I may be so
Yes.
obvious, being younger than me, that I am quite literally working with students across campus. This ethics book is for students across campus. It is not just for students that are in my agriculture science major or that are even in the College of Agriculture. It's a general education course. So I get to work with, and that's one of the things I most love about the class is I get to work with students across campus. So take, for instance, my computer science students in all of my classes, including the ethics class. I remind them, look, it you you all know better than I do that you're actually preparing yourselves for jobs that don't exist right now today in January 2024. And so always be thinking not about, be focused on what you're doing now, but always be thinking about what you can take now that you're doing now and how that may change in the future. We're looking a lot in education, we're looking at the goods and bads of AI. Chat GPT. Anybody says chat GPT in a meeting and a lot of people go, "Oh." And I go, "But you should be using it." And sometimes that turns heads. And I go, "But it in the right hands, and well, everybody's hands are the right hands, but in the right way, artificial intelligence, chat GPT can be used to our advantage and is only going to get more powerful and is only going to be used more often. And our students, instead of squashing our students and saying, you can't use that, why not nurture using it or support students using it? Because they are most likely going to be using those tools on a regular basis in the jobs that they are preparing themselves for, that, as I said earlier, we all know are not jobs that exist right now. I mean, I could bore you for an hour on all of the jobs that were available to me when I was graduating from high school that don't exist anymore. And that's kind of crazy. But I think that's also why I love online learning so much, is because there's so many opportunities out there.
You're preaching to the choir about AI. Kayla and I are advocating the use of AI to help authors, to help students, to help our own internal teams do more for people, like do things faster that we couldn't have anticipated doing even 18 months ago. It has been incredible, the pace of change.
And I use AI almost every day. I have my intern use helping, and we use AI, not for, we don't take whatever AI gives us and only use that, but overall, I think it's super important, especially as professors who are preparing them for careers, to teach them, at least help them understand the ins and outs of AI, that you can't necessarily trust it for everything. And if you're only saying no, don't use it, then you're kind of closing the door on the conversation about what you can and can't use it for, because you can use it for some things. You just also need to have that human layer as well. So, yeah.
One of my students' favorite assignments in the ethics course is I tell them we just go to chat GPT. So I know that when we say AI, there are a couple of different tools, but we do chat GPT. So I will say, ask chat GPT, and then I'll say, ask them this question. And then their assignment is not just to post what chat GPT says, but it's analyze what chat GPT says and tell me where the holes are in what this computer generated statement or what the computer generate, what chat GPT responded with. And overwhelmingly, I was a little worried that students are going to be like, this is, why are you asking us to do this? This is so silly. Overwhelmingly, students like, this is super cool because I'm learning how to use this tool in a way that I never knew I should be using it or could be using it. So they've really embraced those assignments and those opportunities. But I think it's very important to use AI and ChatGPT and all of those types of platforms and those types of tools, because my students are going to be using those on a regular basis. I remember when drones, this drone and it can fly and it can take video and they are being used extensively and regularly in agriculture now. They can predict the amount of water in soil, they can predict, the amount of water or the lack of water that plants in an entire field have. It's fascinating how technology, how fast it develops, but how it enhances our world and what it is that we do on a regular basis. Again, who knew that we would be chatting with each other from Iowa and California via video? This is the Jetsons. This is literally the Jetsons.
Faster than they expected the Jetsons to occur.
Right? Right? Yes. So,
Well, and AI is also being used in agriculture for similar, things where there are those machines that the produce will be picked and then the AI can determine whether, it's rotten and then it punches that one, out of the conveyor belt, the stream. So even uses like that, yeah, which is crazy. I mean, that was maybe a couple years ago that I saw a video on that and my mind was blown. So
but it's, and it,
helpful, useful.
yes, absolutely. And technology, technology, just like agriculture, is such a broad term. Technology is really moving way back when in agriculture from horses to tractors. And then tractors that not only tilled the soil, but dug the little hole and then planted the seed. And it's so cool to see it. It's still intertwined. It's now that we have machines that are doing some of the planting and like hydroponics, soilless growth of plants. There's the machines that check the pH of the water and check the temperature of the water. And if we've got fish involved, if it's an aquaculture situation, then there's machines and there's AI technology that's checking the health of the fish through a laser on a regular basis. Like, it's amazing, but it is all intertwined. It just, keeps improving and keeps getting better, which I think is very exciting.
It's that exponential growth, which is really cool. The past 80, 90 years has been incredible, from the Green Revolution to AI. We had a couple of guests who were horticulturists last season, and they said, I asked, is this the next big green revolution? And they're like, there's been 6 or 7 of them in the past decade, And it's so neat that we're taking this technology and immediately applying it to our food systems to deal with the worst problems in society, like food scarcity. So,
the people that you spoke with and you are both absolutely right. I concur. There's been 10 or 12 green revolutions, and when we can highlight each one of them, we can highlight those people that contributed. Just like moving from the stone wheel to the horse to the tractor, it all contributed to where we are today. And that is specifically what I love about this ethics course is not only do I get to facilitate student learning across campus in all majors in the basics of agriculture, but how they view all of those changes. What do you think about Norman Borlaug's work? Maybe as you assess Borlaug's work, you don't really see that as important as the person who came by or came into the picture 20 years later and developed something else that was related, but maybe had even more of an impact on feeding people or safer food supply. So that's what I appreciate about writing this publication and the class, is that the students, I get to share agriculture with them and make them kind of appreciate more their food and where it came from and who helped them get that food, but also their personal views on not only how it developed, but how they treat all of the products that they use that were derived from agriculture on a daily basis. That's what I most appreciate about the specifics of this course and the publication.
yeah. You mentioned too that a lot of your students want to go into more sustainable or heirloom practices. We're taking it back even then, to not quite so industrialized. Like, we're able to produce food on a mass quantity, but we're realizing that might not be the best option for at least sustainability wise. So, I mean, in your view, are there any core concepts that we used to really follow that we should be going back to? Or if you want to answer it in a different way, what concepts are the students taking from your course then that are leading them to try and go into these more sustainable practices? If you want to shy away from the opinion question.
No, no, I gotcha. And I will, what I'll share is what I share with my students. We cannot, we're not ever going to be able to feed the world. And I mean, anybody who goes into agriculture, but all of us together, we are not going to survive without industrial agriculture. It's just not possible. It's the here and the now, it's the past, it's the here and the now, and it's the future. It's the it's developing more efficient practices in that industrial agriculture that I try to inspire my students to examine. How can we feed what we're potentially looking at as a 9 billion person
Mhm.
population? How can we feed all of those people and still make sure that, the food supply is safe? But also, how can we make our food deserts disappear? And how can we
Yeah.
feed people who are food insecure? And
Mhm.
then, of course, the web gets very intricate
Yeah.
because we've got to talk about where those food deserts are and where the food insecurity is. It's very logical, but to force a student to really stop and focus and think only on that topic, it's exciting to see where students will go with their ideas.
Yeah.
I have a lot of students, as I mentioned, they want to go into sustainable farming. They want to go back to heritage farming. I've even had students go, well, I want to go back to the way it was. And I'll say, well, what do you mean by the way it was? And for instance, a student responded just recently and said, well, you grow your own vegetables and you have chickens so they can lay eggs, and then the fertilizer, and
Mhm.
then you can consume the chickens, and they kind of go from there. And I say,
Mhm.
okay, that will feed you and your family. So that's fine. And I
Mhm.
love that for you. But know that that's not that on a grander scale, when we're considering more than just our community, ourselves or our community or our smaller communities, that that's not necessarily the most sustainable way to farm. You can sustain that for yourself, and I love that. Any student who wants to care for themselves and care for their family in that way, I almost get inspired, like, yeah, what am I doing in Southern California? Why
Mhm.
why aren't I out doing that and, farming for myself? Um and so I try to help my students, consider uh their what their goals are and how that will impact, themselves. We can't take care of anybody else until we take care of ourselves first. So I
Mhm.
do inspire my students to be a little selfish and
Mhm.
well, what am I going to do for me? And then move on from there. But all the time realizing that that won't I've had students say, well, that'll reduce, if I'm not purchasing from industrial agriculture, that will reduce our need for industrial agriculture. And I do have to very politely say, no, that's not the case. We're not going to get away with no industrial agriculture,
Mhm.
but it's the understanding of how we can keep improving
Mhm.
industrial agriculture that is key. And students who want to do small farming, they want to do organic farming, they want to start a heritage farm. I'm all for it. Sometimes a little jealous.
Mhm.
But just so that I try and make sure they also understand. And I believe that they do. They leave my classes and our programs and our university knowing that, we're not going to get away from this by doing this, but how can they work together? The other catch on industrial farming is that industrial farming is always getting um, the most criticism, contributing to climate change and contributing to the demise of the environment, and
Mhm.
methane and cow burps, and really
Mhm.
when you look at it, I know my students always say, isn't it farts? And I'll go, no, it's burps, come on. But the Environmental Protection Agency puts out, and I have my students analyze this in the ethics course, they put out a report every year of what sectors of world industries contribute most to climate change and the various gases that are out that are released into the environment. And it's our transportation and our in all of the ways in which we want our Amazon packages and
Mm-hmm.
all of the things that we want delivered to us. It's transportation, it's the electrical and the oil and all of the ways in which we, fuel our cars and warm our homes and cool our homes and electrify our homes. Those are all the parts of industries that contribute the most. Agriculture contributes just less than 10%. And yes, it is the cow burps that will contribute. But in the grand scheme of things, agriculture plays a much smaller part than is automatically assumed or claimed to be understood
Mm-hmm.
by the general public. So I also hope that my students will take that message out into the world that we're not going to get away from industrial farming. Industrial farming has problems, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
problems, as does every business and every sector of the way in which we run our world.
Yeah.
But as long as they are regularly looking for ways to improve and support and get the right message out there to the general public who may have the wrong message about what agriculture is and what it does, how it negatively but more positively contributes to our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important to me as well.
Yeah. I like that message that there's always room for improvement in any industry and sector. And also, going back to the sustainable and small, I said heirloom, but I meant heritage farming.
They're kind of one and the same.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and wanting to have your own personal farm and you're able to do that for yourself. That reminds me of our conversation we had last week with an economics professor, because that's very time consuming. So you might be able to do that for yourself, for your small family, but if you're going to expand past that, then you don't really have room for another job in order to, help society and help the economy, advancing technologies. And so, but yeah, so, in order for our economy to continue to grow and advance, we need new technologies. We need people working and not necessarily everyone farming for themselves. So you have to have industrialized agriculture then at that point because we don't all have time. I don't have time. I tried to start a farm. I mean, not a farm. I tried to start my own garden, and even that I couldn't handle. I can do a few herbs. I can do a tomato plant, but that's not going to sustain me for an entire year. It's a lot more work than initially you think it might be. So to have my full-time job and enjoy my time when I get home and not just be gardening all the time or and raising animals, that it's not going to work. I like the grocery store. So we still need those industrialized practices for some things. But like you said, there's always room for improvement. We're not nobody's happy, always happy or okay with current standards for any industry.
Well, it brings it to that Daniel Webster quote that you start your title with, which is that when tillage begins, other arts follow. The farmers, therefore, are the founders of human civilization. And I just thought that was so powerful to kick off your course. And it does. It does.
That's one of my favorites. I had that hanging in my high school classroom. I don't have a classroom at Cal Poly, but it's in my office. And I've had a lot of fun conversations about that. And in the high schools, I want to go back to Michaela, just real quick, what you said about, I can grow a tomato plant or I can grow basil. Part of teaching high school agriculture is facilitating students in the FFA program. Part of facilitating the FFA program is students have to have projects. So they can raise an animal for the fair, they can grow plants in a garden. So we had school garden plots And I would say to my students, okay, well, this Tuesday, we're all going to meet. Everybody who has got a garden plot assigned, we're going to meet. We're going to till the soil. We're going to fertilize. And by the time I got to like the third item that I said we were going to do, it's high school students. So
Right.
then they would go, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I'll go, your garden plot is 4 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot.
Right.
So I'm glad that you said it's a lot of work. Let's talk about acres. Our school farm is about 1 acre, but that's fence line to fence line and would include the parking lot and where this classroom is and the garden plots and the greenhouses and so on and so on and so forth. Can you imagine it just being all soil and you'd have to plant corn?
Right.
And some students they'd get real excited. They go, you really could tell. They would they wouldn't say tell me more, but you could see it on their face. They'd kind of sit up straight. Oh, never thought about that. And others would go, that sounds awful. And good. You're not going to be a corn farmer. I don't want you to be a corn farmer. I don't want you. But it is, but they would also then, we would go through all of that and they would get their tomatoes and they would get their peppers and and they're so proud of look at this zucchini that I grew. And I'm like, yes, are you going to make zucchini bread? And they're like, what's that? And just like, the building blocks of, improving from Norman Borlaug, the whole attitude of that's all we're going to do is we're going to mix the soil and put up our fence and fertilize to that zucchini that they're so proud of. Oh, it's so much fun. But then that quote, I would always have conversations about that quote because they would say, what? So farmers are the reason why we're here? Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me you had breakfast this morning. You have clothes on your body. Let's talk about this textbook. Let's talk about the cinder block walls and the concrete in between the cinder block walls that are keeping this building, and on and on and on and on, because it is the foundation. And I've had students who've been in other majors and then they, sometimes it's just the way people think at the university. They'll say, oh, so are you saying agriculture is the best major on campus? No. But I'm saying that you cannot go a day without interacting with something from agriculture. And I'm not just talking about your food. And I love where those conversations go from there. And I feel I can safely say I've had tens of thousands of those types of conversations, and they have all gone in different directions. But I love how that starts such a fun conversation. I've had conversations with strangers by just saying, oh, well, what do you teach? Well, I teach agriculture. Why would you want to teach that? What did you have for breakfast this morning? I see that you're enjoying a cup of coffee from Starbucks. Would you like me to break down all of the products that came from agriculture and not just the water and the coffee beans and possibly the cream of any kind that's in your coffee that you're enjoying right now? So and I always say it with a smile on my face and a lighthearted tone because I love those conversations. I like for all of us to know where all of our products come from, and because I think that helps improve, like we said earlier, industrial agriculture. If we know where it came from, we have to break it down to know where the possible faults are, to know where to improve those faults, to then essentially make it better. And so those conversations of breaking it all down, especially when people haven't thought about the fact that, it's the cup and everything else that got the coffee in the cup, and it's all of that that goes into it. And it's what I love the most about teaching agriculture, but then applying the ethics to it as well. Where do you personally come from when you're considering all of these facets of the agriculture industry? Because it's okay to just consider your own viewpoints on it. So it is. I love that quote, and it's one of my favorites for starting those good conversations that are just general conversations about how agriculture impacts our day every day, and a lot of times every hour of every day.
That really kind of segues well into what is our final question. So we do a little segment called You're Wrong. which is it is your chance to take 2 to 3 minutes and just set the record straight about some misconception in your field or discipline.
Because at my core, I'm an animal scientist.
Mm-hmm.
I would touch upon, because I've touched upon organic and conventional farming and industrial farming, and like those are all some of the things where you're wrong when you say we can do without industrial farming. There are improvements that should be made and can be made and hopefully will be made, but you're wrong when you say we we can do without industrial farming. Also wrong that it is solely cow burps, not farts, cow burps that are depleting the ozone and killing, that's the sole greenhouse gas. That's very, very, very wrong. It's really the Amazon packages that we, myself included, insist on having delivered, within 2 hours or longer. It's all of the industrialization that it takes for our days to operate that is doing damage. The damage is much slower than people will predict or people will say on social media and online. But it's, the increase of the population. The more people we put on the planet, the more all of the items that it takes to live your daily life are going to be consumed. So it's the population growth that affects that the most. Stop blaming the cows. So that would take me to the animal science part of it. And that is that I tell my students all the time, it's cool. I have no problems if you eat meat or don't eat meat, but understand the importance of animal products, meat products, or non meat products in your daily life.
Well, we really, really enjoyed talking to you.
I had a good time.
Thank you again, Kim, for joining us on today's episode. You and I really bonded over our shared teaching experiences, and I love that your approach to both teaching and advising includes letting students form their own opinions and their own whys. And you also leave space for and allow them to change their minds and make their own decisions. And I hope that our listeners can also learn to embrace those conversations with their students.
I have to say, I agree with Daniel Webster. Farmers are the founders of human civilization. They're also what is driving our advancement. I think it's really neat that graduates today are learning to support a growing world and a new world with innovations and advancements that the Jetsons themselves could never have predicted. It's an exciting world, and it was an exciting conversation. Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thanks for tuning in to Can I Get a Retake, a podcast by Great River Learning. If you liked the episode, show your support by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. For detailed show notes and transcripts, visit greatriverlearning.com.
Can I Get a Retake is brought to you by hosts Michaela Albee and Michelle Manneman, with editing by Maggie Christensen. Artwork for the podcast is crafted by myself, and our intro music is courtesy of Comma Media. We'll be back soon with another captivating chat with a top GRL innovator.